Yim was hungry. Qua was also hungry and asking her for something to eat. Mother was gone to search for food others had missed in the fields. There was about 2 inches of dry rice still in the jar, and Yim had seen her mother cook rice many times. Surely she could do the same. You simply pour the rice into a pot and place it on the grill, then put little sticks under the grill and light them with a match. Then add more little sticks to keep the fire burning, and 1/2 hour later you have rice ready to eat. There was just one small step Yim forgot. Add water! Soon the steam was coming out the hole at the top, although it seemed a lot darker than when her mother made rice. And Yim kept adding more sticks to keep the fire strong. The sticks also seemed to have a strangely strong and toasty smell as they burned, but Yim assumed they were from some kind of dark and toasty smelling tree. When it was about time to take the rice off the fire, Yim's mother came home. Would she be proud? There was a blood-curdling scream from her mother, and then a pair of chopsticks whipped across Yim's forehead so hard she thought she must now be bleeding. "You total dunce! Look what you've done! That was the only rice we had, and you sent it all up to the sky in smoke like it was nothing! You think the clouds are hungry? Do their tummies hurt? I spend the whole day clawing through upturned roots looking for bits of potato and others missed to bring you, and all the time you're home doing this? You stupid, stupid girl!" Yim couldn't have felt more hurt, and after having tried so hard to help. Her mother had never struck her before, nor yelled at her like that either. Yim's forehead throbbed with pain, but not nearly as much as her heart. Mother leaned back against the wall and slid down slowly to the floor, crying. Her mother's face was covered by her own hands, sobbing. What a terrible day. It was late that same night before Yim's baby brother Qua, still hungry, managed to cry himself to sleep. It had been 2 long days with nothing substantial to eat, and hunger makes the stomach hurt. Mother was sound asleep, exhausted from her long day in the fields. Only Yim remained awake, too upset to sleep. Instead of sleeping, she was pondering a plan to correct the wrong she'd done, or a way to make things right again. Finally, the time had arrived, for the edge of the moon was disappearing over the horizon. It was about to be the very darkest part of the night when no one would see her, and the neighbors would all be in their beds dreaming. Then, slowly, silently, she snuck out the front door, closing it ever so carefully behind her without a sound. But the sounds of the night were all around her now, crickets chirping, frogs croaking, and rustling in the leaves and grasses from unseen creatures of the night. With a shudder, Yim realized the magnitude of what she was about to do. It was no longer just a plan. She was actually out there doing it. And she was scared, too scared. Didn't think she could move another inch. But then she started thinking of Qua and what a brave tiny boy he was. There had been the day she had sent him across the fields in heavy rain to buy a penny's worth of MSG from a neighbor to season their food. She had watched him from the porch as he toddled through the pouring rain, splashing through puddles and wading through rising streams that were already higher than his waist. That had been so dangerous. She should never have sent him. He could have easily been swept off his feet and drowned by those waters. But Yim had been younger then, too young to consider such things. And Qua had been so brave, never hesitating a moment, plowing his way through the water, fulfilling his mission for his big sister. Then she thought about the time she had asked Qua to hold the lantern for her in the night, and he'd set the wall on fire all the way up to the grass roof. Neighbors came running and yelling with bucket after bucket of water thrown onto the roof to put the fire out. They put it out, but not before a quarter of the roof was already gone, leaving a clear view of the stars to sleep under that night. Qua had gotten such a scolding from Mother for that, having been told many times never to touch a fire. She threatened to whip him with a stick, whistling it back and forth over his head while loudly describing what he deserved as his eyes filled with water. At that moment it would have been so easy for him to point to Yim and say, "She made me do it!" But he didn't. He kept his lips tight shut, protecting his big sister. Kwa was so brave. How dare she be less now? "This is for you, Kwa," she whispered, and stepped down off the porch. Once down on the ground, the fear seemed less important. Yim was on her way. Down the road beyond the last house were the rice fields. One careful step after another would take her there. With only a few stars peering between the clouds, she had to feel her way along the road more than see how to go. Hands were firmly grasping her lower legs, showing her feet where to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. A little too much grass brushing her toes, and she knew she was getting too far off to the side of the road. But if no grass at all, she was too far toward the center, making her too easy to spot if someone else came along. She had to stay close to the road's edge, ready to hide. There were very real dangers traveling like this. A few times in the past she had heard the cry of a tiger hiding somewhere in the nearby trees, out of sight. A tiger could be sleeping beside the road now, where she'd trip and fall over him. She wouldn't see. Nor would she see venomous snakes that come out of hiding at night to share the road. Dry leaves were stirring on the ground with the sound of insects crawling among them. Some of those insects can sting, and like to sit on the end of grass stems as though waiting for a victim to come along and dare to touch their blade. There was even a kind of frog with poisonous skin on his back, dark and ugly, that she might step on, and with an even more venomous bite when threatened that caused much swelling and sometimes death. Yim tried not to think about these things, but her imagination wouldn't stop, and she could feel her heart beating inside. Guiding one foot after the other so long through the night tired her arms, but she had come prepared. One leg of a small wooden stool was tucked through her belt, which she used occasionally for rest stops for a few minutes before continuing on. She would sit on that stool, listening to the night sounds, hoping to detect the sound made from breezes sinking through the dry rice leaves in the fields. Was she close enough yet? Close enough to hear? Then she'd tuck a leg of that stool back into her belt and grasp her own legs again and continue this important journey. Actually, the biggest danger didn't come from the creatures of the night, but from the owners of the field should they discover her there. They were all asleep now, weren't they? During those few days on the streets while traveling to their current home, Yim and her mother had seen a small girl, perhaps 9 years old, come running out from a laundry with the shopkeeper right behind her and quickly gaining on her. The girl's arms were hugging Wash Family Laundry, and the shopkeeper's arms were holding a long machete high in the air as he yelled, "Stop! Thief! Stop! Stop!" The girl kept running, but soon the machete caught up with her. With one swift horizontal swing of the metal, the little girl's head had gone spinning alone through the air. It hit the ground, still spinning, rolling against the building, and then bounced back into the street, perhaps 10 feet from the body left behind. Her body lay draped over the clothes with one arm still hugging the bundle, as though she were determined not to give up the clothes, even now. The shopkeeper let her keep them, walking slowly back to his laundry as though content that no one would dare try to steal from him again. The rice in the fields was close now. She could hear the distinctive crispy sound of the rice leaves rubbing together in the breeze. Only a few minutes more and she'd be there. Yim began picking the rice, aware that she could be killed just as quickly as that little girl. This time she was the thief, and that was the law. Thieves could be killed. As she picked, she pictured her brave brother, Kwa, in her mind, thinking how he would smile in the morning, eating the rice that she was going to bring him. She also knew how to hide her deed. picking only one or two ears from each stalk, making it look as though the birds or perhaps a monkey had been there and broken them off. No one would know. No one would even suspect. And little Qua would be so happy. She loved her baby brother and picked until the cloth she'd spread out could hold no more. Tying the cloth into a rice-filled ball and attaching it to her belt opposite the stool, she began the slow journey home. It took a long time to get back to her house, longer than she'd expected, because of the extra weight of rice on one side and the wooden stool on the other. But finally she slowly opened the door and was inside. It was wonderful to hear her mother's gentle snore asleep next to Qua. It meant she was home. It meant she had survived. There was more rice than would fit in the jar, so after filling it, she let the rest of the rice fall into a pile around the jar, then hid the cloths and crawled into her bed. She was so exhausted. Sleep came quickly. A squeal of delight woke him up the next morning. It was already daylight. She knew her mother had just discovered the rice and so pretended to still be asleep. Soon she heard the crunch, crunch, crunch of the wooden mortar and pestle, and she knew it was her mother outside breaking the chaff from the rice and letting the wind carry it away. Soon they would be eating. But right now, him just wanted more sleep. An hour or so later, they each had a delicious bowl of rice in their hands. Yim, Kwa, and their mom. While they were eating, Mother started looking at Yim as though she was questioning something, curious about the dirt on her clothes, the bits of grass in her hair. Yim pretended not to notice. She'd been scolded enough already. But soon that questioning look turned into one of astonishment. Yim still pretended not to notice. Then the astonishment melted into the most beautiful smile Yim had ever seen. Yim's mother never said a word about the rice in the jar, nor spoke again about what had happened the day before. But that smile had said it all, everything Yim needed to hear. She was forgiven. She was appreciated. And most of all, she was deeply happy.